Welcome back to Just Ask George. I'm David Wolf here with the head dude at BH Capital, the website www.bhcapitallimited or ltd.com. George,
one of these days, I'll get you away from the limited and to say
unlimited.
Unlimited. BH Capital Unlimited.
I'm sorry.
That'll work.
Anyway, BH Capital, merchant bank, worldwide. George Lovato, one of the great thinkers in structured finance. We're here to talk about, is there money out there?
Start over again.
Let's just start again.
Yeah. And take a breath so I can enter in the conversation. You're just
all right, here we go.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Just Ask George. I'm David Wolf here with George Lovato Jr. George, how are you?
Good.
Excellent. It's good to see you again.
We haven't done this in a couple of weeks, like I said before, and I miss it. It doesn't. My juices aren't flowing.
Well, they're starting to flow now, and with this, we've got a two-part series for you in this "Is There Money Out There" segment within Just Ask George. George is, of course, one of the premier head honcho thinkers in structured finance, corporate finance, and there's so much to learn. And I'm out in the ecosystem. As George knows, I'm inundated with inbound client inquiries, folks that want to get financing.
Right.
They're desperate. Many of them don't have money, and they're being preyed upon by scammers, bandits, and thieves, and there's stealth money, which I love
stealth
that phrase, of course. So there's a few things. I thought it might be good to sort of establish why is this happening, and the way I'm seeing it often is exactly that. You got people without money that think they've got a cure.
Well, I think you mentioned it sort of in our pre-show discussion. One of the tenets of qualification for a BH Capital client is their capacity. A, is their business viable? Okay, not their idea, because we don't get involved in financing startups maybe once a year. You know, we're really funny about that. We could get involved in literally hundreds of startups, but there's a lot of great ideas. But we're about the mature business. We're about financing the opportunities for that business principle that needs money. So capacity is the first issue. If they don't have it, we aren't interested in having them as a client. So now there's a universe of these people out there without capacity.
And in the mind of George Lovato, capacity means...
Well, first of all, the viability of the business.
You just said it. Okay.
Yeah.
So the viability of the business, the ability to pay professionals fees to do all
you got to
the
hire,
things
you know, it's like we talked about in the cost of capital.
Sure. That's right.
You have to have an accountant, you have to have a lawyer. The lawyer is going to have to review documentation from a lender. Your accountant is going to have to prepare financial statements, maybe performas. Maybe there might be a financial statement with extensive footnoting. We just got through talking about appraisals, valuations, need and necessities, feasibilities.
Yes.
There's all that third-party documentation stuff aside from hiring BH Capital to sort of coalesce all that together, create the team, create a syndication or participation. You have to have e pluribus unum. You have to have cash. You have to have the ability to pay all those people to do all their jobs in order to form capital, whether it's debt or whether it's equity. So capacity.
Okay.
All right. There's the capacity and the viability of the business. So if they don't have all of those components that make up the word capacity, that defined capacity for them, then you basically have a guy with an idea, or you've got a business that might be breathing its last breath.
And I think part of what's breeding the scammers and the stealth money is there are a plethora of people out there that they may even be beyond the idea stage. They're looking for money. They have no capacity, and they feel like they found a source. So they fall prey to the guys that are out there saying, I do have a source for you, 100% financing. You don't need any of your own money.
Or they even represent it as, I'm the source, and you have to, you know.
Correct.
So you've got this business without capacity. He feels that he's then induced into the process, and the process is write us a check, send us this documentation, and we'll start the underwriting process. Typically, that business without capacity doesn't have the know-how or expertise to do the proper due diligence to find out if this guy or that institution is real. So what then happens is the documents and the check and everything goes off, and then nothing. I mean, zero. And a lot of times you'll run into those people, and they'll call me and say, I've sent over $10,000 out to various people,
right.
and well, shame on you.
Exactly.
That's all I've got to say.
And I'm going to interject, George. One of the things I say to people is, look, I cannot help you with the mistakes and sort of the baggage you're bringing to the table now. If you want to move forward with your business objectives, right, you're going to have selective memory loss and forget about the fact that you just blew $10,000 for nothing.
Right.
It's not our issue.
I try to point back to the issue that they needed to do better due diligence on who they were doing business with. And first, and second, when you really get down to it, structured finance is a very small world. I mean, there's not 350 competitors out there that are involved in it, and there are not 1,000 different lenders looking to lend $5,000 or $50,000 to these small businesses or business ideas. It's just not that universe. So there becomes another question: size. This is where size does matter. If a prospect is coming to you and they need $50,000, well, is it an idea, or is this a micro business that needs a micro loan? You're going to have to make a distinction there, and this is part of their problem too. The deals are too small. They need $5,000 to make a down payment to buy a truck so that they can get in the delivery business. Sure. They need $25,000 to buy ducks and turkeys for their farm, and so they can get in the poultry business. You start looking at size and saying, well, if they can't do it with credit cards, friends, family, former enemies, and mom and dad
at that level,
then there's a real problem there.
Right.
Okay, so now flip the coin over. The guy comes to you and says, I can generate this. I love this one. I can generate $500,000 in the next 90 days in revenue if I just have $100,000 to buy raw materials. He gives you the list, or to put up the rest of his website, or whatever the case may be. Okay, $500,000. Have you produced revenue before? No. So you're telling me 90 days, bingo, you're off to the races with a business that's profitable? Oh, yeah. I mean, the margins in this are unbelievable.
Yeah, as
we all know, I mean, those are 1 in a million shots, but everybody's got one. And so that same guy goes and thinks he's selling that idea to this guy in a dark room somewhere in urban America that's collecting $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. He thought, the business guy thought he sold this guy his idea. And now that guy, of course, he feeds into him, gets him all excited, and then off to the races they go to nowhere.
He feeds on their excitement, and every entrepreneur is very excited about their own idea, which is an ingredient. They do need to be excited, tempered with rational thinking about how to form capital. So there's the universe. There's those guys out there, and of course you see a $750 million request. They've got no cash in it. They've got no money. They can't. This is a development. I just saw this the other day. They've got no A&D work done. There's no master plan. There's no engineering. There's no entitlement work completed. But they need $750 million to build this. This was a refinery development project. And I asked the golden question, how much money are you putting into it of the $750 million that you're asking to borrow? How much are you coming into the table with? And the answer was nothing. I said, well, how much have you got in it right now? And they had this business plan that was like this thick. And they said, well, we have about $12,000 in it. And I said, so what you're asking for is 100% financing. And I said, and you've got nothing. You don't have a pre and post construction appraisal. You don't have a construction budget. You don't have. No, we're going to use the money that you loan us to get all that stuff. Okay, now
when I turned them down, I said, sorry, guys, it's just not the way it works. You have to have skin in the game, and you got to bring that stuff with you when you're talking at these numbers to be serious. They turned around and they went and talked to one of those guys that said, I can get it for you, and I'm going to use an insurance bond. Okay.
Okay.
And that insurance bond is effectively going to insure the loan that my lender is going to make to you for $750 million.
Oh, my goodness.
And so they stroked a check to this guy for, I think it was $10,000, $15,000, and he was going to put it all together for them. They could call back, and one of the principals had said to me, just want to thank you, and but we did find a lender. Mm-hmm. And he's issued an LOI. I said, really?
Right.
I said, well, let me see that LOI. And they shot it to me, and oh boy, was it was just like we've talked about. It was nothing more than a piece of paper. It said absolutely nothing but identify a dollar amount. And in there it said that they paid whatever they paid, the thousands of dollars for this letter.
Sure. And
the lender was to be identified at a later date, and they were going to have to come up with another $50,000 to pay for these quote unquote insurance bonds, which would secure the $750 million. And so I pointed out that I think what you need to do now. Understand, they had executed the LOI. They'd paid this guy. I said, what you need to do before you do this, which was too late, I said, why don't you start with the Better Business Bureau? Why don't you go to the state in which he's located and find out if he's incorporated? Why don't you do just the basics? They called back and said, he's not a corporation that he says he is, and there's been several complaints with the Better Business Bureau, and we've asked him to send our money back.
Yeah, there you go. There's a plethora of these stories. By the way, folks, this is a part one of a two-part series around scammers, bandits, and stealth money with George Lovato Jr. George, thanks for these stories. We're going to follow up with a second segment shortly here, folks. And
I think the lesson to be learned in part one here is that there is a vulnerability out there in the universe.
Yes.
And we have to pay very specific attention to it. Our job is to educate those guys that it's not as easy as it seems, and there is a process to form capital, and you've got to follow the process. And whenever anytime anybody tells you, all you have to do is, boom, sign here, write a check, and I'll get you your money. That's flag number one.
That's when the red radar should go up. All right, more in part two on Just Ask George. Is there money out there? George, thanks again.
All right, buddy.